go too far because we got to come in with the... Yeah. Sorry. Okay, but close. One, two, go.
Hey there folks, how's it going? I'm actually in Ireland right now, which has been really cool, doing a little vacationing. But today I want to let you know about a new single that's out from Missy and Allegheny, something we recorded a couple months ago. You can check it out now. There are actually links in the description of this video where you can go check this song out. It's a cool song, there's some really great guests on it, and in this video I just want to tell you how we put this all together. I'll even show you the banjo solo. It's got some double stops, triple stops, bluesy bends and stuff. It's pretty neat, so I'll show you how to play that. So the song is called These Old Blues, and it's actually a cover of a song that Loretta Lynn recorded a couple of years ago. But this is one that Missy found later on that actually is kind of like the missing link in the record. You know, it's this like slow 3/4 bluesy feel that none of the other songs on the record had that, so it was kind of the thing that was missing from the sound of the whole record. And it's not a super complicated song, as most bluegrass songs are not particularly complicated, but that's kind of the magic of the arrangement of who you end up putting on the song that can actually make it a little bit more special. And that's what made this version of the song pretty special, is who we actually brought in to play with us. So the core band, what is actually Missy and Allegheny, is obviously Missy. She's on vocals and playing bass. I'm playing banjo. We've got Tristan Scroggins playing mandolin. Ben Garnett is playing guitar. And Ellie Hawkinson is playing fiddle. And that's the band that we've been touring with and rehearsing with and recording with this past year. And as we started putting this one together in the studio, we were just rehearsing it, trying to figure out what this was going to turn into. I think it was Allison Brown, who's actually producing this record, said, you know, I'm kind of hearing two fiddles on this one. You know, is there anyone that we could call on short notice and get them in and do twin fiddles on this? And so, you know, we put out some phone calls and asked a couple people. And then I'm not sure how this happened, but then someone said, okay, well, you know, what if we could get two more fiddles? What if we had triple fiddles? You know, if you've heard a lot of the older, you know, fiddle music that was played with Bill Monroe's band, or even some of the Texas fiddle stuff, triple fiddles is like one of the coolest sounds, but it just doesn't happen that much these days. So then we made some more calls, and eventually we got Daryl Anger and Shad Cobb to agree to come down and work on this. And pretty short notice, I think it was the next day that they came in and worked up all these really cool triple fiddle lines, this cool intro, outro, this kind of trading solo thing with Ellie. And before we even got to the recording process, I think the way that Missy was hearing this song was as a duet, you know, not to sing it alone or do three-part harmony like, you know, so many songs in bluegrass, but there's just something kind of unique about having this back and forth, you know, swapping verses, singing harmony together in the chorus. And so we were lucky enough to have Danny Paisley, one of my favorite, Missy's favorite, everyone's favorite bluegrass singers, to come in and sing that duet with her. You know, I'm a big fan of Danny Paisley and the Southern Grass, the music that Danny played with his dad Bob Paisley, with the Lundys, with Joe Val, with so many people. And I know Missy grew up doing the same thing. So I know that was really powerful for her to have Danny come in and sing on this song. Now, if you're still here and you're actually still watching this video, then there's a good chance that you're a banjo player and you might like to hear a little bit more about banjos. So let's talk about the banjo that I used on this track, and then I'll actually show you how to play the solo that I played on this track as well. And it's kind of worth mentioning which banjo is on this track because it's one of 5 banjos that were played on the whole album, all chosen for very specific reasons, though I will admit that I played the banjo on this track because I just bought it the day before and I was really excited about it. And it's actually something I've been looking for a while now. It's a later 30s Gibson TB3, which means it was a tenor banjo converted to a 5-string banjo, added a tone ring to it. So it's one of these kind of pre-war parts banjos that are, you know, mimicking those pre-war original flathead banjos. We don't really usually call them parts banjos, we call them conversions, but that's basically what it is. And this one actually really is a parts banjo because it is, for all the parts that are usually pre-war in these conversions, they are all pre-war, but kind of from different banjos. So maybe I'll make a separate video about that another time because it gets a little bit complicated. But suffice it to say, this is a banjo I've been looking for the sound of it. It's one of these TB3s from, you know, kind of the mid-30s. And I couldn't be happier with it, and I was so excited to get it that once I brought it to the studio next day, it was like I had to see how this would sound through the mic. And so we played a couple different songs with this banjo, and These Old Blues was one of the ones that ended up being recorded on this banjo. And if you're really a banjo nerd, then we can go over exactly what's in it, but the important things, I guess, would be the fact that it's a maple neck. I think it was made by Huber. The tone ring is an unplated slow own tone ring. It's got a Silvio Ferretti bridge on it, and I'm using the GHS J.D. Crowe set of strings on it. But anyway, let's move on to this banjo solo. It's a pretty short one. The mandolin actually plays the first half of the verse, and then we split that, and I play the second half of the verse as the banjo solo. Kind of in the same way that we put this together in the studio as far as an arrangement, that's the same thing I did with the solo. You know, I had listened to the song a couple times, I had made sure I knew the chords and the melody and all of that, but I didn't really plan ahead in terms of what I was going to play as a solo. I didn't even know if I was going to play a solo with all these other fiddles on there, and that was kind of cool because it meant that as we were rehearsing this and then we started tracking it, that's when the ideas started to kind of come for what the solo would eventually turn into. So as we're rehearsing it, I tried a couple things, and then the first couple takes, I would, just improvise a solo and see what came out. And then with each take we would do, I would try something a little different. I would keep this lick, I would get rid of this one, whatever it was, till towards the end of it, we did whatever our last take was. I'm not sure exactly how many it was. That was just the final take for the banjo solo as well. That's what it ended up being. And none of them were all exactly the same, but it was cool over time how they would kind of solidify into what the final solo ended up being, which I ended up being pretty happy with. So let's go over exactly what went into the solo and some ways you can think about some of this information. It might not be the best banjo solo of all time, but it definitely comes from some of my influences, so I can share with you how that turns into something that I then play on the record. And the song itself is pretty simple, especially the section that my solo was on, which is really just E, A, B. In the key of E, that's just 1, 4, 5. And there's a 2 chord in there, but for the most part, it's really just bread and butter playing in the key of E. So the way that the solo starts is with these hammer-on double stops walking up to a bending double stop, which are kind of the same thing. The way you should think about this is that I'm actually just playing this kind of 2-note chord shape, and I'm either using a hammer-on or a bend to get into that chord. So you don't really have to think about this as playing a chord and then bending one of the notes. It's more like, what note do you have to bend to get into the chord that you're playing? So one of the ways you could think about that is to actually just play a chord and then think about which of these notes could I play a lower note and then bend it back to where it's supposed to be. There's a lot of different ways to think about it, but that's kind of how I think about it in this case. And in this situation, I was just trying to play kind of the beginning of an interpretation of the melody. I don't really play the melody for the rest of the solo, but at the beginning of this anyway, I wanted to at least open with what sounded a little bit like the melody of the song. And then, of course, I quickly leave the melody because what happens afterwards is just what I could only describe as a blues guitar lick. I've been playing guitar for over 15 years. In a way, even though I don't play that much guitar now, I still kind of see the banjo fretboard as a guitar player, or I have a lot of these influences from when I was younger playing rock guitar, blues guitar, all of this stuff. So in the moment, I don't really have stock blues guitar licks that I apply to the banjo. I just have these pentatonic blues patterns, and I play stuff that I remember from when I was younger. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, obviously studying blues guitar is a great way to go. And one way you can start to get into this stuff is to mess around with this blues scale pattern for an E minor pentatonic blues scale, however you want to describe it, and then add some bends into that as well. Now, after that, it gets a little bit more complicated with some double stops, triple stops, sixths and thirds, and all kinds of stuff like that, but we can actually break it down further. But here's a slowed down version of that last phrase in the solo. So the stuff in this section isn't really made up of licks or phrases that I learned directly from anyone, but it's all really based on the playing of players like Don Reno, J.D. Crowe, Sonny Osborne. A lot of this kind of slow, double stop, walking up and down the neck country style playing that is influenced by guitar players, influenced by pedal steel players, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of what makes this sound so complicated but also really cool is what's in the right hand. So if I simplify that and just show you mostly what's on the left hand, I think it might be a little easier to see what's going on. And the way that I would characterize most of this is just sixth patterns. And if you don't know what sixths are, you can check out a link in the description where I'll show you what that means, how to put those shapes on the fretboard and move up and down scales. But that's basically all I'm doing with little added chromaticism, just following the chords. After that, it's just about deciding what you want to do in the right hand, just rocking back and forth or repeating some notes. That's just trial and error. And that's not anything particular that I practiced. It just happened to be that that's what was coming out while I was playing that solo. I'm sure if I tried it again, it would be completely different. So folks, I hope you find it interesting, and I hope you go check out this song. We've been working on this music and this band and this album for a long time now, so it's great to have it finally be out there for people to listen to. So don't forget, you can check in the description to find links to check out this song, and then eventually check out the rest of the album coming later this year in the fall. So anyway, I'm going to go back to exploring Ireland, but I hope you enjoyed this. That's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Reason why that you left me all alone, and so